Hello and welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Vault games, our Wednesday night legacy. Every Wednesday and Friday we play in-store, much back to normal here. We have Seed of the Synod powering up a Thoughtcast, Chalice of the Void as well, counting towards the affinity cost and being quite a roadblock for most decks as well, cutting off all of the 1-mana spells. They're so efficient, and you get to play with things that feel like 1-mana spells with Thoughtcast. 1 blue to draw 2. Performs Brainstorm sometimes. And Force of Will, stopping Stoneforge Mystic, which would have given Lucas a chance back in. Oh, and this is not correct. Got a Pithing Needle being cast right through his own Chalice, so Log making a really significant error there. Urza's Saga would be able to tutor this up later, but this is not what you like to see. Hopefully this will be instructive for people. Now, typically Chalice at 1, you don't have to even think about your own Chalice very much because you're not constructing your deck with a bunch of 1-drops. It's not like you're playing Brainstorm in your Chalice deck and you need to switch gears once Chalice arrives, but there are some 1-drops in there. You got Pithing Needle, Shadow Spear, Relic of Progenitus, or Soul Guide Lantern potentially. And when you have your Chalice out, you definitely don't want to be casting those. Fortunately, that has landed, and I don't think either player is going to catch it. Edition Pithing Needle, very nice looking card. Back to basics for Lucas. Turn these lands basically into Lotus Petals, 1 use only. And Mog decides is worth it to jam a Karn here. I am not sure what he can get that's going to make this investment worthwhile. He does, of course, need to use his mana for something, but Karn can't win the game on his own. Grabs an Engineered Explosives. A long way around to be able to take out this back to basics. He'll have the Mox Opal, but he'll need 2 more mana sources to get enough Sunburst to take out the back to basics. The alternative would be not to use your mana until you have a threat that'll actually be able to win the game. Batterskull lands for Lucas. This might just be a purely defensive play, but man, does that feel awful. Explosives can get rid of this Germ token along with his own Chalice. Not seem like a strong line. Pithing Needle becomes a chump blocker. Batterskull is going to look to clear the Karn. Yes, at least Mog is not looking favored here. Fight this illegal play with the Pithing Needle. Gods may make sure everything plays out the way it's supposed to. We'll see. Jace the Mind Sculptor. Bouncing the Pithing Needle. And this is going to force the Explosives activation. And this is pretty grim. Noble Hierarch. An upgrade to that tropical island. I think that mana was a little inefficient. I believe this tropical island could be untapped right now. The white mana was used for the Jace. Perhaps it was really important to keep Swords to Plowshares mana open? I think so, though. couple of dual lands going back on top with the Brainstorm from Jace, and this is looking like it's going to get wrapped up pretty quick. Uro pulls another land drop. They'll be coming out of the graveyard soon enough. Plenty of basic lands for Bant here. Ox Opal. Found with Urza's Saga. Plenty of win conditions on board for Lucas. He could potentially win with Jace. Beat down for 2 a turn with Stoneforge Mystic from this board position. Theory eventually arrives. I mean, I don't even know if you need it. Might as well get a little bit of card advantage. Eventually get that Pithing Needle out of the way. Could cast Uro from the graveyard. I mean, there's so many different lines here. Uro sticks, draws a card, makes a land drop. And that's finally enough. I mean, that was a totally losing effort there at the end. Every aspect of the board totally dominated on Bant's side. That's exactly what they're looking to do. Back to basics in game 1. Very, very dangerous type of card that's often relegated to the sideboard. I'm not sure how many copies Lucas is playing, but Bant can get away with playing very few dual lands compared to previous control builds. Really lean into the strength of those basic lands, especially with the fact that you're going to be getting the extra land drops from Uro, which to a degree eases your color requirements. When you have, 2 or 3 extra lands thanks to Uro's Frigate ability, you don't really have to lean on dual lands as much. Have plenty of every color mana lying around just with your basics. 8cast, on the other hand, has no reserve list cards in it for the most part. Emery, turn 1. Powerful draw engine. Be able to recur at the very least Urza's Bauble each turn. Outdraw Bant 2 to 1 unless it gets something going. Towards the Plowshares, takes care of her. Much of an advantage can be had. Urza's Saga. If Back to Basics doesn't show up, this could end up being enough of a win condition on its own. Urza's Saga in this deck, very, very dangerous. So many artifacts, including the mana base. Key to the Synod. Finally, I would say, is a truly legacy playable card here. I mean, there's been times where Affinity has been kind of reasonable in Legacy, but this really feels like a premium strategy compared to just trying to make something work. This works. See a pair of constructs in all likelihood. Wow. Kappa Cannoneer. Pitch to Force a Will. Engineered Explosives in Lucas's hand. I can do a lot of work taking care of constructs. Pair of constructs, one during the end step, one after the draw. Likely see Shadow Spear here. Nope, just going to be a bauble. Explosives. This is going to get plenty of value out of this. At least it's not a pernicious deed. Non-land permanent. Back in the day, they would have templated a card by listing out the non-land permanents previously. Or cards that would take the time to write out artifact, enchantment, creature prior to the printing of planeswalkers. That's often how they would do it. Pernicious Deed actually quite good with planeswalkers because it blows up about everything else except for non-artifact or non-enchantment lands. Dismember. Kappa. And there, one of them pitched a Force of Will earlier. On a 6/6 currently. Oh, and it's actually enough on his own. That Kappa Cannoneer gonna punch things out. Moving on to game number 3. This turtle does serious work. It is worth noting that he enters with a +1/+1 counter. Is not gonna get caught by a lot of kitchen table players, I'm not gonna lie. Really interesting phrasing on this card. Typically, you would say whenever another artifact enters the battlefield under your control. That way it wouldn't trigger itself, but it's in a theme deck that cares about modified creatures. And in that commander deck, they wanted to have this 6-mana creature. Be able to play with all those modified effects as fast as possible. Much easier to cheat out in Legacy than it is a pre-con, however. Guy can come out very quickly. I'm actually curious if we'll see anybody sleeving up Lightning Greaves with him. Speed things up by a turn. He's already pretty much impossible to target. Ward 4 is just insurmountable for the most part. We got Retrofitter Foundry. That was the previous bit of tech for these Urza's Saga style decks. Retrofitter Foundry giving some inevitability, creating extra artifacts for Urza's Saga. I think Ninja's probably made the best use of it, as that deck also plays with Ornithopter, which can be upgraded to a 4/4 construct if it is a Thopter. And Emery goes up again, dissolves, and whiffs, actually. Yeah. Saga, Karn ×2, Nasai. Kind of a worst case scenario. So this Urza Saga can eventually find a bauble to recur. Noble Hierarch. It's like a prismatic ending. Targeting the Retrofitter Foundry. Deafening Silence is in play here. And boy, it does not feel like it actually favors Lucas at this juncture. Only play one spell a turn. That means his counter spells are going to be very vulnerable. Player can't cast more than one non-creature spell, so if Mog plays a creature, Lucas tries to counter. The counter back will essentially be uncounterable. Lucas won't be able to play a second counter. Looks like he's just got a fist full of them as well. Prismatic Ending, a good reason to be playing Bant, just such a versatile removal spell. Got Force of Will on Engineered Explosives. Lucas just stuck on 2 mana. This is really brutal. constructs arriving, and they're pretty big. I believe we've got 6 of those 7. Like 7 power constructs. And chump block one of them. This may just be a concession. And I guess he can actually draw engineered explosives potentially. Dismember takes out Noble Hierarch, or attempts to force a negation, however. Stuffs it. Gives that chance to draw on explosives and clear this entire board. Ooh, Force of Vigor. All right, that takes out some tokens, and those can't be recurred with Emery. And it looks like Sai goes up and gets the concession. That was pretty rough. Lucas having just a fistful of counters, nothing to really stabilize on board. That Deafening Silence didn't do him any favors there. I wonder what his thoughts are now that he's been able to play against this a little bit on the strength of Deafening Silence in this matchup. It seems like it may not do what you need it to do in terms of being able to win a counter battle over must counter creatures, which this deck has a bunch of now.